Hey everyone, welcome to the Week 13 recap of the Danker Family Fantasy Football League. I'm your host, Paul Jensen, and we are just about getting to playoff time. It's only 1 week left in the regular season, and things are getting a little tight here in the Danker Family League, that's for sure. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Looking at the screen now, the standings. So is one thing I definitely did not realize this entire time, and I will apologize for it because I've been saying, oh, if Adrian wins and Ben and Nels lose, then Adrian clinches the playoffs. But clearly I was wrong about that. So, from my understanding, I always thought it was the top two teams from each division make the playoffs. Apparently, that is not true. That is incorrect. It's the top four overall teams. I guess it just so happened to be the top two in each division the last couple of years because that's what I always thought it was. But that appears not to be the case because, as you can see, Dallas Donuts, Adrian, is already 2 games ahead of both Ben and Nels with 1 game left in the regular season, and he is not clinched. And then if I go to the playoff bracket, he's not even, or he's right there in the playoff bracket. But um, even Stevens is not. She is down here in the consolation ladder. So I was wrong this entire time. So a little bit embarrassing by yours truly. So my apologies, my sincerest apologies to all those who I have misled. But basically, nothing has changed as far as clinched so far, other than that Tom Danker is still the only one who is clinched. Myself, Garrett, and Carol are still the only ones who have been eliminated, and literally everyone else still has a shot, amazingly. Even with Ben losing 5 in a row, he still has a shot. With Nell sliding as much he's been sliding these past few weeks, he still has a shot. John, Joan, Carrie, Adrian, they all have a shot to make the playoffs. And we will go into what happened over the weekend that got them to this point in the season coming up real soon. As you can see, there's a two-way tie for second in the West with Joan and John both tied at 7 and 6. So that's pretty big right now with 1 game left to go. Obviously, they're both going to want to try to win, and it's going to be huge. And I don't believe anyone plays any divisional opponent next week. It's all intra division. So, um, but yeah, so crazy stuff. It's going to be one heck of a week, one heck of a final week in this regular season. So buckle in or buckle up, I should say. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Looking at the streaks, obviously Aunt Carol, Tom, and John are our three hottest teams, just on 2 game win streaks right here. And then down on the losing side, it's myself and Dad having lost 2 in a row, and Ben still cannot get off that losing streak. It's been very brutal. Once upon a time, Ben was first place in the East, only 1 game back of Uncle Tom, but now he is all the way down to 6 and 7, and boy, it is not looking good. So sorry, Ben. And as I showed before, looking at if the playoffs started this week, this is what the playoffs would look like. It would be Tom at the 1 seed, Adrian at the 2 seed, playing Joan at the 3 seed, with John Lopp in the 4 seed. So John still actually has a chance, regardless of both John and Joan could get in. It's very possible. Um, so again, I apologize. I got that wrong. I always thought it was the top two from each division, but apparently it's just the best four overall teams. So, man, that's crazy. One of these years we might have four teams from one division make it. I mean, that'd be I don't know if that'll ever happen, but that would be insane. But yeah, and then if the playoffs started this week, then also the consolation would be Carrie at the 5 playing Ben at 6, and then 7 and 8 would be Nels versus Carroll, and playing for the last place, or not playing for last place, but trying to avoid last place would be myself and Garrett. So yeah, so now let's get into the scoreboard of what happened over the weekend. As you can see, a lot of scoring, and we have our very first 200-point winner of the season. Congratulations to Aunt Carol. Look at that. CB's Titans, 205.24 points. First time this entire season someone's gotten over 200, and we'll dive into that matchup. And she even beat Ben by over 100 points. Like that's easily the most points anyone scored in a matchup all season, and the biggest margin of victory anyone's ever had this season. So Carol, man, she's probably thinking, where was this team this entire season? Right? So, but wow, what a performance by CV's Titans. Crazy. Fewest points, even though Ben got trounced, he did not get the fewest points. It was Joan, it was Mom. She only got 85.96 points in her loss to John. So not a good performance, not a great day for Mom's team there. Best win obviously goes to Aunt Carol. Toughest loss has to go to Carrie, even Stevens. She lost to Adrian by less than a point. Less than a point. That is just so hard to take. 0.82 points she lost by. 0.82 or 7.2. No, it's 8.2. 0.82 points. That is just that's so brutal. And it came down to Rashee Rice in Sunday night in that final drive and Mahomes couldn't get one more completion to Rashee. That would have won the game for Carey, but once upon a time, Carey did beat me by less than a hundredth of a point or less than a tenth. Either way, it was 0.08 she beat me by, and now she's on the other end of that, losing to Adrian by less than a single point. So very unlucky. And obviously, with that being said, Adrian gets luckiest win. So I know he's gonna snipe at me about that later, but it's all right. But going more into the matchups now, into the box scores, just to see what happened here. Obviously, first matchup, Tom versus myself. I got this one correct. I said Tom would beat me, and he did. Um, obviously, he had a couple key players here. Tyreek getting 32 points. I mean, what's new? Brandon Ayuk getting 15 in a great game for that 49ers offense, which I predicted, by the way. Devontae Smith had a great game, 24 points for him. His kicker got 15. So I mean, it was really those four guys. I mean, yeah, you still got Mahomes, Montgomery, who did okay, but considering that he got nothing from his tight end and negative points from his defense, those four guys right there really carried him for this victory. For myself, I mean, Tua had a decent game. Derrick Henry and Tony Pollard both had nice games. But that's it. It was just those three. I mean, Keenan Allen, yeah, he got 10 points, but that's well below what he's averaging this season. So for me, I only had three players. It was tough luck. There were some things I could have done differently. Obviously, I could have started Puka Nacua. I started Tank Dell, and he broke his leg. He had been playing really great the past couple past couple of weeks, but unfortunately, he just broke his leg really early in that game and was out for the rest of the game, and I couldn't get any points out of him. So obviously, I could have played Puka, could have played Jerome Ford at flex instead of Zach Moss, but at the end of the day, I made the decision to start those guys, and they lost. So yeah, I just didn't have enough production from my starters, and Tom just got the right amount of help from his stars in Devontae, Tyreek, and Devontae Smith and Tyreek Hill. Gosh, I'm mumbling my words today already. Um, but yeah, and then moving on to next week, it's the last week of the regular season, so Tom won't be playing for much, but he's going to get a few guys off buys. Josh Jacobson and TJ Hawkins will be coming off a bye. Will Kenneth Walker be available for him? Jalen Warren's been not doing so much lately, last past couple of weeks, and he will be playing a tough Patriots run defense on a quick trip, quick turnaround Thursday Night Football. So I wouldn't be shocked if Tom benched Jalen Warren and put Josh Jacobs back in the starting line, or even Kenneth Walker. Wouldn't be shocked either way. Um, but yeah, so that's how I see it going. Well, and will Justin Jefferson be back? That's another thing for Tom moving forward. Is Justin Jefferson finally going to get off IR and get some real playing time coming up in these pivotal games for the Vikings? So that'll be really interesting to see how Tom plays it out, considering, Hill, Ayuk, and Smith are all three great fantasy receivers so far. So he'll have to make an interesting decision there. And then for myself, I'm just going in the final week. I'm already out of the playoffs. I really got nothing to play for. I could play spoiler and try to ruin my sister's fantasy hopes or playoff hopes next week because I play carry. So, and will I want to get revenge for that super tight loss to you, Carrie? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if I'm feeling it. But yeah, I mean, Puka, I'll probably have to. I mean, I will have to replace Tank Dell at some point. I'll get Kincaid back, and yeah, I'll have to trust I'll have to see how it goes this last week of the season before the quote unquote playoff round for the loser bracket too. So hopefully I just don't end in last place. That's all my goal is for this for myself moving forward. Second matchup, Garrett versus Nels. This one I got wrong. I predicted Nels would beat Garrett, and Garrett came out with a win. In fact, he only won by 6 points. So really close matchup here. For Garrett, Kyron Williams, man, he's been awesome this year. That was an interesting trade that he made between him and Tom, getting rid of Justin Jefferson. But hey, Kyron Williams is actually really good in fantasy this year. He's been awesome. DK Metcalf and Mike Evans, his wide receiver group, 37 and 29 points for his two receivers. That's just absolutely insane. It's really, I mean, decaf, like it's coffee or something. DK Metcalf, um, has had a really odd season. He hasn't been consistent at all, but and I thought he wouldn't do much against Dallas, considering they've had one of the better pass defenses in football, but he really stuck it to him, and man, he was just incredible. Um, Cortland Sutton had a nice game against Houston. It's always good to have. So his all of his receivers did pretty well, and his one running back and Kyron Williams really carried him into that win. But his receivers obviously were the two big ones for this week that just got him over the edge. For Nelson's team, he's had to start Russell Wilson, but he didn't do much. I mean, 15 points is all right. Running backs really let him down this time. Najee Harris had a decent game last couple of weeks, but just really had a down game, which was really surprising against Arizona. They really have nothing to play for, and they're one of the worst run defenses in football. But Steelers, for whatever reason, maybe it was that crazy weather, they couldn't do anything against them. But just like Garrett's wide receivers, Nels had Debo and Michael Pittman, and they weren't too far behind DK and Mike Evans. I mean, Garrett had 37, 29, Nels had 35 and 27. So he almost went toe to toe with his receivers. What a great, probably the best overall game in terms of wide receiver production for these two facing against each other. Taysom Hill had a nice game, and even the Dolphins defense, they've been great, especially when they have matchups like this against these poor teams like Washington. Um, one obviously huge bad decision I mean, obviously, hindsight's 2020, and James Conner had been playing pretty bad all season, and he finally goes off against his former team in Pittsburgh. So obviously, yeah, if Nelson would have played him instead of one of these three, and Brian Robinson, Najee, or Javonte, obviously that helps. And Cooper Kupp, the guy he benched, who I thought he rightfully benched because he had been playing pretty bad too, he gets 15 points. If you play him instead of Brian Robinson, it could have been different. So yeah, just a very tough way to go out for Nels. Now he's still alive in the playoffs, and moving forward, he'll have Lamar back, he'll have Saquon Barkley back, he'll have Devontae back. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes for him moving forward. He won't be playing Brian Robinson or James Conner next week because they're both on byes. So you can definitely bench Brian Robinson next week, Dad. Um, and then for Garrett, just finish strong, man. I mean, you got your fourth win of the season. You're tied for last place, so maybe you can try to win next week to avoid ending in last place. And your running back really helped you out this week. Maybe Aaron Jones comes back next week, and you have really good running backs for the final week of the season for once. But um, yeah, I mean, we'll just see. Finish strong, man. I believe in you, Garrett. Um, Moving on to the third game, Carroll versus Ben. I predicted this one right. I said Carroll would beat Ben, and boy, did she. 205 to 92.38. Over 100 points for this one. Yeah, just taking one look at Carroll's starting lineup, other than the defense, the Steelers defense was the one bad spot. But other than that, every single player 12 points or more. In fact, only two players in her starting lineup had less than 20 points. That's insane. And two of them, like, I mean, McPherson, the kicker, one. That's crazy. And two, Rashad White, who's been one of her best, most consistent players, still had a good game, 19.6 points, was her third worst performer in her starting lineup. So, I mean, you got Hurts with 23, Mixon with 29, Shamar Chase 31, Nico Collins 34. So I take back what I said about the last matchup because I was going about Garrett and Nelson's receivers. Carroll's receivers, she had damn 65 points from her two receivers. So it's just incredible. I mean, Carroll's team was just absolutely bonkers. Sam Laporta 29, Pacheco 21. It's nuts. I mean, that's easily, one of the best, if not the obviously it's the best performance in our league this year. But of all leagues, really, it's tough to do to get to 200 points in fantasy. So perfect playing, perfect playing this one out, Carroll. I mean, you really played it perfectly because, I mean, I guess technically you could have played Evan Ingram at flex and that would have gotten you a little bit more, but that's just nitpicking at this point. You played it absolutely perfectly. And this was with like Zay Flowers and the Ravens defense on a bye. I mean, those are two of your better players overall this season. So the fact that you still got 200 points, I mean, wow. What a performance by CB's Titans. Incredible. Um, but yeah, and poor Ben, she's been struggling and he just had to face Carol and not Joan this week. So face the wrong Danker sister. Um, yeah, I mean Chris McCaffrey did his thing. Travis Etienne and AJ Brown both had good games, but other than that, kind of similar to my team. You only had three good performances and everyone else tanked. Um, yeah, just not good overall, man. Not much you can say. Ridley's back to where he was, back to being a frustrating player. And Joku didn't had a down game. Chris Godwin, who have I been saying, I mean, it wouldn't have made a difference obviously this week, but I've been saying this all season. Chris Godwin, without a good quarterback, just doesn't seem to be that good of a player. Um, and so he hasn't really had a big he hasn't consistently had a good season this year. He's had a couple of decent games, but really he's been under 10 points the whole almost all season. So um yeah, just he does what he's been constantly doing. And then the quarterback, having both Fields and he dropped Dobbs, it looks like, but having Fields on the bye, having to start Baker Mayfield, yeah, it's just yeah, I mean, just nothing you can do. Tough luck. Um, Next week, moving. I mean, he's still alive for the playoffs, but barely. He's hanging on. It looked like Ben was a shoe-in for the playoffs a few weeks ago, but yeah, it's crazy. I mean, your running backs are still the only strong point in your team now. I mean, AJ Brown is too, but it's gonna be tough. Is will Justin Fields be able to help you next week? I don't know. You know, it's really tough. Your depth is definitely not looking that good anymore. I mean, Jacoby Myers started off great, hasn't been playing that well lately, so I don't know. It's tough for Ben. It really is. He's going to need some monster performances from guys like Ridley and Njoku and Godwin, and obviously Justin Fields. And it's tough. We'll see how it works out for Ben, but I feel for him. 5-game losing streak, not good. John versus Joan. I think I predicted this one correct, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have my notebook with me. Amazingly, I left it at work. So I use my notebook at work too for work stuff. So maybe I should have two separate notebooks. You'd think I'd be smarter than that. But I believe I picked John Lopp because I'm trying to refresh my memory, and I think I picked John to beat Joan. And he did. So I got this one right too. So this whole week I'm 3 out of 4 so far. And obviously it was a pretty convincing win. Mom had the least amount of points of anyone this season. I mean, Brock Purdy went off, did his thing. Other than that, and Jake Ferguson, he had a great game too, but everyone else was just absolutely horrendous. I mean, she had her defense, Cowboys defense got -3 points. You don't really see that much. I mean, last time they had negative points was against the Cardinals, surprisingly. So it's just the Cowboys, man. Like, I mean, yes, they'll give you 20-point games from time for a lot, but they'll give you those occasional like what the hell kind of games, So, and her receivers didn't really help her out either. They got 11.6 points from her receivers. I mean, I guess you can count 15 overall if you count Josh Downs. And then Eckler and Mostert, it looks good on paper, right? But those two have not been playing well recently. I mean, I guess Mostert has played well recently, but last weekend not so much. I mean, he did overhit his projection, but barely. And Austin Eckler's been very disappointing this season. I mean, he did get hurt too after week 1, but even when he's back healthy, he's hasn't had many good games. Um, for John though, Alvin Kamara has been a godsend. And for him, I mean, he's been easily, honestly, he might be the best running back in all fantasy, considering other than like maybe Christian McCaffrey. Um, God, he's been incredible. Every single week he gets 15 at least. It's insane. And he was such a late draft pick because he was suspended for 3 games to start the season. But John picked him up. I forgot what round he picked him up, but it was obviously a great decision to draft him and take a risk on him, and it worked. So he's been great. Chris Olave had a great game. Trey McBride, what a pickup too. He's another one of those young tight ends that not many people notice, but I have a feeling, with the fact that the Cardinals just let go of Zach Ertz, he's the main man now in the tight end group for Arizona, and he's young. It's only his second year in the league out of Colorado State. Uh, he has potential to be a top five. I mean, he's not a top five tight end now, just with the small sample size, but he's got that potential to really get in that top five, especially with most tight ends in this league not really, getting up there in production, especially in fantasy. It's really just been Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and TJ Hawkins in the last couple of years, and I guess Dallas Goedert too from time to time. But and I guess George Kittle too. But I think, once those guys start getting a little older and more injury prone, you'll see guys like Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, they'll really start to make a name for themselves in this league and be top tier tight ends. And he's been playing really well lately. So that's another good pickup for John. And also his defense. Anytime you have a defense facing the Jets, that's going to be a winner. So, um, yeah, I mean, just looking at this team, you only had one player in single digits. It was his kicker. Everyone else, and like I say this all the time, if that's a huge recipe for success when only two or one or less or none, if you have an overwhelming majority of your team getting double digits, that's a huge recipe for success there. It's not always happens. It doesn't always mean you'll win, but it increases your likelihood, that's for sure. A-Chan on the bench with 25, that's one of those tough things. I wouldn't have started him too if I were him, but it didn't matter. But yeah, he's coming back from injury, so that's good sign there. Just adds more to his depth, and he'll be getting Addison and Gabe Davis back, so he has always got more options too. But moving forward, Mom's going to get better with Josh Allen next week. I mean, even though Brock Purdy wasn't the issue, right? It wasn't quarterback, but you'll have Josh Allen back. Um, it's gonna be tough. I liked Mom's team earlier in the season. Uh, I don't know. I want her to win next week because she's playing Adrian. But but it's just like the receivers is it's not enough, especially since now neither of them have a quarterback. First, Garrett Wilson didn't have Rodgers. Now Trevor Lawrence got hurt Monday Night Football, and who knows what's going to happen with him. We don't really know how bad or serious his injury is. There's a chance that neither of and Josh Downs with with no Anthony Richardson. He's got Gardner Minshew. So all of her receivers are down to their second string quarterback, and it's never that's just not a good situation to be in. So I feel for you, Mom. I really do. I really liked your team early in the season, but it's just, man, it's just you're just tough luck. It really is. Um, yeah, so I'm sorry, but it's gonna be tough. I'm cheering for you. I really am, and you're really close to make the play. You just need to hold on at this point. You need to either win or hope other teams lose. You need to hope John loses. You need to hope Carrie loses. You need to hope Ben loses or Dat or Nels. You need these people to all lose. So you can do it, but it's gonna be tough. All right, enough about me talking to my mom. I feel like I've been doing that for the last 5 minutes. Moving on to the last matchup, Adrian versus Carrie. I got this one wrong. I remember I picked Carrie. I said, Carrie, I believe in you. I said it would be close, and I was right, but it was just less than a point away. Oh man. For Adrian, again, Sam Howell. What is like? This is crazy to me. Sam Howell, like, yeah, like if you watch Washington Commanders games, they're not that impressive. Like they're not a good football team at all. Yet Sam Howell keeps hitting great. He's his stat guy. He keeps getting good production in fantasy. Even if they only score 15 points in a game, which they've done like the last two games, I think both against Dallas and Miami. So somehow he's getting fantasy points, just a lot of completions, a lot of yards. He's a stat patter. Um, and then Charbonnet had 16 points. CeeDee Lamb, 32 points. That he was awesome Thursday night. DeAndre Hopkins had a great game. Even his kicker, Matt Gay, 14 points. So yeah, I mean, uh, yeah, overall, I mean, he only had about four. I mean, the over. So yeah, I'm can't even speak right now. The majority of Adrian's lineup overhit their projection. So that's obviously a good key in why they won, why he won. For Carey, Dak Prescott went off. He's continuing to look great. Rashee Rice had a good game, just barely wasn't enough. Only one catch away from Rashee Rice that would have won it. Deontay Johnson had a decent game. The Colts defense had an incredible game. The special teams blocked two punts, returned one of them for a touchdown. So that really helped Carey, but it just wasn't enough. Um, yeah, I mean, she could have played Chuba Hubbard, obviously, instead of Jahmyr Gibbs, but I wouldn't have done that, right? Like that's one of those uh hindsight's 2020 things, but it's tough to see, man. Like any one of those, you play Tajay Spears, um, you play T Hig. No, that wouldn't have done anything. Never mind. But yeah, you are gonna get moving into next week though. You are gonna get James Cook back. You're gonna get DJ Moore back. Um, Chuba Hubbard is someone to really consider moving forward and to play. He's had two really good weeks. And I think, you know, he's starting to really show up that he's the number one running back in Carolina, and he's been the main focal point of their offense, especially with a young offense with young Bryce Young at quarterback. So maybe it might be time to consider him to start in a really pivotal week against myself. So why am I giving you advice against playing me? Why am I doing that? Adrian, you got Stephon Diggs coming returning from bye. Justin Tucker, Gus Edwards. You'll need Gus Edwards now that Ramondre Stevenson got hurt, and he's probably not going to play this Thursday against Pittsburgh. Um, so it's going to be tough for Adrian to uh, or for Ramondre to come back. So Adrian will probably play Gus Edwards, and he'll probably stick with Zach Charbonnet, especially if Kenneth Walker doesn't come back, which I'm not sure if he will or if he won't. Um, but yeah, yeah, that was it. That's basically all I have for the matchups from this week. So uh, 3-2 this week. So I was 29 and 31 after the last one. I believe now it puts me up to 32 and 33. So back to one game under 500, predicting 32 and 33. And then one last look at the final standing projections. 1 week away from the playoffs, everyone. 1 week away. Um, Uncle Tom still at 1, holding strong. Adrian up to 2, Mom, Joan at 3, Carrie at 4, John at Lop at 5. This is fine. This is the projection, by the way, not what it is now. Ben Danker at 6, Nels Jensen at 7, Carol at 8, myself 9, and Garrett 10, with Garrett trending down the most from draft day, down 7, and Carrie trending up the most, up 5 spots, and Adrian and Ben tied for second, trending up 4 spots. So that's the show, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Um, really hope that you guys had a great week. I know I had a great weekend. I spent some time down in Tucson with Tom and Betty and Steve, Julie, Jennifer, Garrett, David, Danica, um, all of them down there. Nicole, Betty's daughter. So yeah, it was a really fun time. Had a good time, and we talked some fantasy football too. Obviously, Aunt Carol too, and my mom and dad. Can't forget them. But it was a good time, and we all had a lot of fun celebrating Uncle Tom's 70th birthday. So a final happy birthday to Uncle Tom. I know I've said it to him plenty of times over the weekend, but just want to give him one more wish of a happy birthday. And yeah, that's the show. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will be coming out with the Week 14 prediction video later in the week. Hope you guys have a great night and enjoy your week. Bye, everyone.